If the PFL suddenly fell on hard times and had to hire me to run the business, here's what I would change. Now, first of all, keep in mind that I'm not anti-PFL. I'm not bashing the PFL. I got nothing against them. Personally, I think that they're one of the promotions most poised to give the UFC some good competition. I've had dinner with execs from the PFL. I like a lot about their broadcasts. In fact, eventually I'm going to create a series of here's what I like most about promotions like the PFL. And I'm going to do one of these for all the major promotions, even the UFC. So this isn't to just be out there and complain about things. There's a lot of great things that the PFL is doing, and I love those. I'll get to those another time. But if I were to change some things, here's what I would change. I think probably the first thing that comes to mind is just decluttering the product. It feels like the product has a lot going on and a lot of extra little gadgets that are calling for my attention, things that are taking away from the fight. Something you have to understand about MMA fans is that most of us are fairly simple people in what we like. Every once in a while, we like something flashy, we like a cool walkout, but at the end of the day, we just want to see a fight. We want to get to the fights, we want to watch them, and then we want to get to the next one. At least personally, that's what I really want out of a broadcast. It's great that they are thinking outside the box, adding a lot of extra stats, but I feel like the product just can drag on a little bit. There's a lot of time spent watching Kenny Florian, Sean O'Connell, and Randy Couture standing in front of a camera, and they are great at their job, but I just wish that we had less of that and more time spent on the fights. I wish that we would take away some of these statistics that are on the screen and have a much more streamlined, more minimalistic view. These are all my personal preferences. They may not be your preferences, but that's what I would love to see out of the product, is a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more urgent. Now, PFL is banking pretty hard on the fact that MMA fans want out of MMA what people want out of other major sports brands. Like Major League Baseball, like the NBA, they are assuming that by creating a product that resembles that in a lot of other ways, that they'll be able to carry over those fans because the product looks similar. And there's some wisdom to that, but I think that overall, MMA fans are also a lot more different than traditional sports fans. Having all the stats on the screen kind of reminds you of watching a baseball game where there's lots of stats up on the screen. It tells you the speed of the pitch, all these different things. But don't overestimate MMA fans' desire to have all of those things flashing at them when they're really just coming to watch a fight. Find a way to present those things in a much more pared down, streamlined way. And I think that people would have more patience for the broadcasts. The other thing with the PFL they're banking really heavily on is the seasonal format. So, they have these regular season and playoffs and championship. And it looks like over the years they have condensed that a little bit to where it happens in a shorter period of time. And I do applaud that. Last year, the championships happened in November instead of New Year's Eve. And I think that's a great idea. I appreciate them making that change. So yeah, they have this regular season format. And the thing about regular sports that keeps us engaged for these regular seasons is that they are teams. We're invested in our teams because of our geography or just because of players we like on that team. And PFL doesn't have that sort of team loyalty right now. And year to year, their roster has gotten better over time, but they run the risk of becoming a little bit stale, especially if they're keeping the same fighters over and over. I question if they need a little bit more turnover and really need to shoot for some young 3-0, 4-0 prospects. I would even say bypass the Challenger Series and just put them right in the regular season, or a lot more slots from Challenger Series for the regular season. I feel like that kind of turnover is what's really needed, and what could be harming their product is that, because of the regular season meritocracy way of it, of like the matchups are really, especially later as the season goes on, the matchups are determined by points rather than matchmaking. The problem that runs into is that you create duplicate fights that don't need to happen. You end up getting the same people fighting the same people to the same results most of the time, over and over again. And there's a reason why promotions like the UFC are on this mission to put together the fights that fans want to see. People want to see what happens. Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor. They want to see fights like that. They want to see Brock Lesnar versus Fedor Emelianenko. Most of the time, PFL's format does not create the fights that the fans want to see. It may pit the best fighters in their organization against each other, but it doesn't create the fights that we want to see most. And because of that, that's going to be a knock on their business model. Now, they are doing this whole like pay-per-view fights league, which is great, but long term, are we going to be more excited about the pay-per-view fights, or are we going to be more excited about the regular season? They're creating all these different segments in their business now with like PFL Europe and Challenger Series, regular season, Super Fight Series, all these different pieces to the puzzle. And I wonder if that's going to create a little bit too much complexity within their business. Again, that almost kind of goes back to the streamlining their model. I appreciate that they are wanting to, look to Europe and create a system to bring up fighters from Europe. I appreciate that they're creating an avenue for, younger, less experienced fighters to come into their ranks. I do appreciate all that, but I feel like they need to focus on the regular season model and combine it with the needs of MMA fans. I would say the needs of MMA fans that I'm referring to are create the fights that the fans want to see and make that your main thing. Create a way for those fights to happen. Meritocracies are great, but this isn't the NBA or the NFL, where it's purely, decided on points, who wins, who loses. There are advantages to making MMA a mainstream sports league, but you can't ignore the fact that it's still two guys or girls getting into a cage, fist fighting with each other. And there's something primal and, dare I say, even a little bit barbaric about that. And that's what makes MMA MMA. And the more you try to make it just another sports league, try and convince people that it's like NFL or the NBA, I think you lose a little bit of what drew us to MMA in the first place. I could be wrong about this. This is just one guy's opinion. But I would just say be wary of that and make sure that at the end of the day you're giving fans what they really want to see, and that's fights that are crazy between two fighters that people have always wanted to see fight each other. Make sure that you're creating those fights. And again, they have the Super Fights, pay-per-view series coming up. We'll see what happens with that. Maybe that could fix a lot of issues that I have. Personally, I want to see the PFL do well. I want to see them succeed. There's a lot of things about their business model that intrigues me, and I'm really excited, especially 2023. I'm so excited to see life in the city, folks. I'm so excited to see, especially 2023, I'm so excited to see what the PFL can offer us, from super fights to Europe. Who else knows what they're going to introduce and throw away? So on to the next one, I guess.